Alright, a very warm welcome back everyone. Today I want to start talking about music theory. And yes, I know this is a topic that some of you might not really like, others might love it, but I'm of the opinion that if you want to write good music, it should be a given that you talk about some of the backgrounds so that you can easier come up with some good sounding chord progressions or even melodies. So this is what I'm trying to start with today. We will start looking at this piano keyboard here first, and what you see is that you basically have groups of black notes here, apart from all of these white notes that we are going to talk about in a second. So we have groups of 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3 black notes here, and to the left of all of these two groups you have a note that is called C, right? But we are not going to talk about this note first because as we are talking in English right now, it's quite easy to memorize all of these notes, especially the white ones, when you start at this note here. So this is what I'm going to do now. We start with this note, which is the A, and then you basically just have to memorize the first 7 letters of the alphabet and come up with all of these other notes. So we have the A here, and we have B, C, D, E, F, G, and the A again. You saw that you have like a corresponding, so that the black notes and especially the black groups here are repeating themselves. So this also means that these notes that you see here, the C here and the C here, are also repeating themselves, which means that you can just play all of these scales that we are going to talk about in just a second, like in a fluent manner. So you can just start at the C3 here and go all the way up to the C5 if you like to, or even go higher. So you could just do this as you like. And this also means that the notes that you are going to use are basically restricted to these 7 here, right? So from C to B in this case, or from A to G if you want to call it like that. The reason why we started on this A is basically just that we can memorize these keys quite easily, but I'm going to start on the C now, and we have the C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and the C again. That's what we already saw. This interval here is called octave, and we're going to look into intervals in a whole different video, but you also see, we haven't talked about these black notes yet, and if you want to reach all of these black notes, you probably have to do some sort of moving away from these white notes, right? So what we want to talk about now is whole step and half steps. Half steps is basically the right or leftmost note to one of these notes that you see on the keyboard here. So if you start from the C, 1/2 step below the C would be the B here, and 1/2 step above the C would be the C sharp here, right? If you start from D, 1/2 step below would be the D flat, and 1/2 step above would be the D sharp. And also, if you want to talk about whole steps, those are basically just 2 half steps. Now, what you see is when you talk about this note, which I introduced as C sharp or D flat, you see that this is essentially the exact same note. But the problem is, it is you call it differently when you're coming from the C or when you're coming from the D. In our voicing, this note, this C flat or not C flat, D flat or C sharp, will sound the same, but this is not always the case. There are voicings where a C sharp does sound different than a D flat, right? And this is due to the equal temperament that we know in the Western area. So what we want to talk about now is basically this scale here, which we want to know as the C major scale, and also we have parallel minor scales to each major scale. You can find these minor scales if you just go, or if you move your root of the scale 3 half steps below the root of your major scale. So this means if we just count 3 half steps from C, this is 1, 2, 3, you reach the A, and the A is then basically the start note for the A minor scale, right? And this is what we initially saw when I started introducing the note names. So you have the C major scale and you have the A minor scale, and both of them share the same signs, and we'll get to signs later on, which basically means that you can use the exact same notes and the exact same chords even, if you want to talk about this. And this means that you can basically use these keys or these scales similarly. One thing we have not talked about in these octaves yet is that these octaves have a nice relationship frequency-wise. So if we get to if we talk a little bit about frequency just now, the thing with frequency is that every single note has a frequency associated with it. Meaning, if we look at this note is also known as a chamber note. This note has a frequency of 440 Hertz. And if you go one octave above this 440 Hertz, you get a note that swings in 880 times per second. If you go one octave below this A, you get a note that swings half of that, so 220 Hertz. And you can even move further down the line or further up the line as you like, and all of these frequencies will then correspond in this manner. And also the other notes that you have in between these A's, for example, or between any other parts, are then organized in a linear way. But the thing with octaves is always that one octave below will have a frequency that is twice as large as the octave you are talking about here, for example. So this would be twice as large. And if you go one octave down, you also have a frequency that is half as large as you would have here.